الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور انفسنا ومن سيئات اعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد ان لا اله الا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد ان سيدنا مولانا محمد عبده ورسوله. أما بعد فقد قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ادع إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن إن ربك هو أعلم بمن ضل عن سبيله وهو أعلم بالمهتدين. وقال تعالى قل هذه سبيلي أدعو إلى الله على بصيرة أنا ومن اتبعني وسبحان الله وما أنا من المشركين. My dear respected listeners and elders, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I want this to be like a dialogue, not a monologue. So if you do have any questions during the talk, please do ask. Or if you don't understand something fully, do ask so we can clarify, inshallah. The topic which we'll be discussing, inshallah, is rather an unusual one, which is discussed in the masjid, and seldom it is discussed in the masjid. But I feel that this is a topic which holds great significance, especially in the era that we are living in. And it is one of the most challenging topics or challenging issues that we, as a ummah, Muslim ummah, or even the non-Muslims, but from a religious background, that they're facing. But in reality, in actuality, the issue is quite minor and insignificant in front of a true believer in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The issue is not major. But because the society that we live in is a society which is pro-secularist, pro-liberalism, pro-atheism, okay? Hence, as a result, a person gets affected by his environment. And yes, and the issue that we have in hand today is, of course, atheism. And before we start, I'll talk a bit about the history of atheism, because we'll be mainly touching upon some of the objections that atheists they make. Okay, but we'll look at the history of atheism briefly, and what does atheism really mean. So in definition, in its etymology, atheism is it was derived from a Greek word atheos, which means, in their language, without God or without gods. And this term used to be kind of used for those people who were deemed as those who have been forsaken by their gods, or an individual who doesn't kind of conform to the idea of there being a deity. So the Greeks used to use this terminology for those kind of people. Now historically, according to the historic records that we have, it actually dates back as far as the Davidic periods, like Hinduism. When Hinduism started, there were a group of people who actually used to deny God. Okay? Even the majority did believe in God. So that's when this ideology first kind of emerged, you could say, historically, according to the records which we have. And then during the Greek civilization, okay, philosophers and influencers and politicians like mainly Democritus and Epicurus, they tried to explain the universe and our origin from a purely materialistic perspective, without having any involvement of spirituality or metaphysics. And they came up with this idea, and they were really proactive in it. And then throughout history, when this term was fully established and it emerged and its usage became very common, it was during the French Revolution. In France, this is where it started. What is known as the French Revolution in the 16th century. You know, they like to call it the Enlightenment period, or the Age of Discovery, when the West started to advance in science and technology. So anyway, this is like a brief history, and obviously nowadays it's become very common, okay, especially in the Western societies, in the schools. This idea is bombarded everywhere, okay? In the name of freedom of expression, they're actually forcing people to kind of accept their ideologies, indirectly or directly, especially through the education system. But anyways, that's like the brief history of atheism. Now, getting to the point straight away, the first and foremost objection with the atheists they make, okay, is the whole idea or the whole concept of existence, our existence, and the universe. How do we come about? And you know, these are some questions which every single individual, whether it's Muslim or non-Muslim, it comes in their mind sometime in their life. Where did we come from? What are we doing here? What's our purpose here? Or is there a purpose? And where are we going to end up after we die? These are questions everyone thinks of. even the non-Muslims. So the atheists, they propound or propose this ideology that, the universe, it came from nothing, it has got no purpose, we're just here, and after we die, there's going to be nothing. It's meaningless. To put it forward simply, that's what they kind of propose, and that's what they say. And they say that it's more logical. They say it's illogical to actually believe in a deity who created the universe. It doesn't make sense. And they like to use the word delusional. Which famous atheists like Richard Dawkins and these guys, they say that it's delusional to believe in God. It's illogical. It doesn't make sense. Now we'll scrutinize and see what's actually really logical and what actually goes against an individual's intellect. So this is what the basic idea of atheism. Now, alhamdulillah, we as Muslims, we have more than sufficient evidences to back up our claim for the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the arguments present in the Quran. But we look at those arguments which are more generic, which are used in a broader spectrum, throughout different religions, which all religious scholars or philosophers use. And these are very powerful arguments for the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember, what do they say? It's completely illogical, it doesn't make sense. Okay, so we'll look through, inshallah, two of the main arguments which historians or philosophers have used to back up their claim for the existence of God. So the first argument is known in philosophy as the design argument. Okay, and this idea was kind of put forward or became famous due to a British philosopher by the name William Paley in the 18th century. And he came up with this idea. And the basic concept is he drew an analogy between the living objects or the things in the world, in the physical realm, okay? And he used the example, he looked at the watch, how the watch works, the mechanism of the watch, which is so complex. He didn't just come about by fluke, someone, a watchmaker had to make the watch. So he drew an analogy that similarly, the universe must have been created by someone and designed by someone. Okay, he mainly looked at three things. One was the complexity in the biological world, how our physical body is, how our eyes, our internal system, how it is. It's not simple. The mechanism is quite complex. Okay, and then he also looked at the natural flow of the cosmos, the orbiting of the planets around the sun, etc., etc., the consistency in it. And also, so these were his main points. And he said there's also a purpose, that when there's a God, it makes sense because it gives you a purpose. So he looked at these 3 points mainly. And if you think about it, these ideas are actually from the Quran. Allah mentioned these things 1400 years ago. His first point, the complexity of the biological world. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does he say in the Quran? He says, وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. Allah mentioned in Surah Dhariyah, verse number approximately 21. Allah says that وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. Do you not ponder within your own self how Allah has created you? Look within your own self. Complexity of the biological world. Look how complex our body is. Okay? How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has fashioned it and created it. Yeah, there's science in it for us. Okay, the second point is the consistency in the orbiting or the solar system. Okay? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, in Surah Al-Imran, chapter number 3, verse number 189, that إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ لَآيَاتٍ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. The verily in the creation of the heavens and the earth and in the alternation of night and day, there is very signs for people of intellect. Ulil albab. Albab is a plural of a lub, okay? It comes from the Arabic word lub, which means the core of something, and they usually use it for also, because the brain is the core of your head, isn't it? The inner part, inner portion. So Allah seeing people who's got brain, people of intellect, they believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because they ponder over the creation, and then the conclusion they reach is that there has to be a creator. Just like this person, William Paley, he came up with the idea. Okay, later on and made it famous. But this idea exists in the Quran. Allah talks about it. Allah tells you that use your intellect, use your brain, use your common sense. Okay, is there a single example? Okay, and it makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. So that's one of the strongest arguments for the existence of God. But yes, to be fair, from an academic perspective, we will say this is an inductive argument, meaning it's an argument which is based on observation. Okay, it's based on the things you can see. What are the things that you can't see? So they could make a claim that, okay, your argument is weak or we don't agree. But how can you say that's illogical? You can't say that's illogical because there is a proper argument there and it makes sense. And we have examples to back it up. So that's the first point. Remember, our first argument for the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, some of the objections the atheists will make, or they make is that, now you know the universe, it came from a big bang. You don't need a God. From the Big Bang, the universe came into existence. That's how it started. And the basic idea of Big Bang, because I don't want to get into the scientific aspect of it, and not that I know that great detail of it, but if you go to the scientists or Muslim scientists, they will explain it to you. Or in general, if you study in physics. But the basic idea of the Big Bang is that initially, the whole universe and everything that's in it, our Earth, everything, was initially was called a primary nebula. Okay, and then there was suddenly energetic kind of reaction, and it all kind of just starts opening up what they call the Big Bang. And this led, and this gave rise to the universes, the Milky Ways, the galaxies, our solar system, the sun, the moon, and the planet on which we live. So this is the basic idea of Big Bang, that this is how the universe started. So we say to them, hold on a second, this does not contradict our idea or our argument for the existence of God. Because yeah, the Big Bang is there, but God caused it. How does that contradict? How does that contradict? And you know, subhanAllah, a similar verse is there in the Quran. It doesn't talk about Big Bang per se, but many scholars, they say that this is an idea, okay, which confirms with the idea of Big Bang, which Allah talks about in Surah Anbiya, chapter number 21, verse 31. That Allah says, أَوَلَمْ يَرَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَنَّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, that the disbelievers who do not see, or who do not ponder, that the heavens and the earth, it was all kind of at one point together. كَانَتَ رَبْقًا فَفَتَحْنَاهُمَا, and we clothed them asunder, we opened it up. Yeah? And it's similar to, if you think about it, how the Big Bang, they describe it. There was all initially one primary nebula, and it all just opened up. Okay? I'm explaining in a simplistic way, remember. I'm not using scientific terminologies, okay, because I don't want someone to make an object against me. But this is just in a simple format to make us understand. Okay? So it doesn't actually contradict. So, what's the issue with saying that God caused the universe to come into existence? Again, second argument, which is a bit more stronger argument in proving our case for the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is what is known as a cosmological argument. And this is more purely philosophical and more purely logical. Okay, because what happens is the atheists, they normally say that, oh, okay, God is there, but why can't I see God? Prove to me, empirically, that God exists. I want to be able to see God. Okay, like how we observe everything else, we should be able to observe God. I say, okay, fine. Now, everything, all the knowledge that we have, not everything is based on empiricism. It's not based on empirical data. Many things we agree and accept based on other evidences. Like, for example, testimony. Like, put your hand up if anyone's been to a country called Madagascar. It's in Africa. Anyone been to Madagascar? Who knows what Madagascar is? Put your hand up. Everyone heard of Madagascar? So there's a country called Madagascar, okay? And it's not a cartoon movie for the kids there. It's actually an actual country, okay? In the continent of Africa. So, look, none of us here been to Madagascar, but we all believe in Madagascar. Why? Because based on testimony, people's been there, people have, drawn the map, they've put Madagascar there, etc., other evidences. Okay, and it's for testimony. We've never been there, but we believe in it. Many of us have not been to maybe, China, or, Timbuktu or something. But we believe in it. Yeah, many of us might not be to Argentina, but we believe it. Based on testimony. Okay? And the great scholar, Allama Taftazani, the great philosopher, the theologian of the Islamic world, he says, okay, in his book, Sharh al-Aqaid, he says, أسباب العلم ثلاثة. There are three main channels of gaining knowledge. Okay? One is al-hawas al-khams. There are 5 senses that we have. Okay, that's one way, yes. But the other two are, one is al-khabr al-sadiq. When a truthful person gives you a message, that's also, you trust them. Okay, testimony. And third is al-aql, one's intellect. Certain things you believe in, you accept it, even though you haven't seen nothing. For example, if I were to tell you, do you agree that the half of something is always smaller than the whole of it? And they'll be like, yeah, because if it's half, obviously it's smaller than the whole, isn't it? But we haven't seen anything, we've got no evidence, but it's purely intellectual. So it's purely logical. Yeah? So some things can be proven, even though we have not seen it, or we have not used one of our 5 senses to kind of come to the bottom of it. So anyways, so it's called monarchical argument. The basic idea of it is that, and the person who kind of proposed this idea was known, this Christian philosopher of like the 13th century known as Thomas Aquinas. Okay, and he came up with this idea that of cosmological argument. But he was influenced by the Muslim scholar Imam al-Ghazali. And obviously Imam al-Ghazali, where did he get his idea from? The Quran. And we'll come to that inshallah. That Allah talks about it, subhanAllah, Allah talks about it in the Quran. A similar idea. So anyways, the basic idea is this, that look, the universe, okay, first of all, before we get to the cosmological argument, we want to mention something else. That what are the different possibilities for the universe to have come into existence? And there are four main possibilities, as how some of the modern day Muslim theologians or modern day Muslim, preachers, they put it forward in a simplistic format. The one is that the universe, it came from nothing. So there was nothing, as the atheists say, and the universe just popped up from nowhere. Okay, obviously it's illogical. Give us an example, a practical example. Who have you ever heard or you've read in the news or something that all of a sudden an elephant just landed in this garden from nowhere? Or a simple example. Give us something where out of nothing just something came about. One example, please. You never find it. It's completely illogical. So it can't be that. It can't be that from nothing the universe came, because from nothing comes nothing. Second of all, they say, oh, there's a possibility the universe, it created itself. The universe creates it. Now again, it doesn't make sense. How can something create itself? Because for you to create, you have to exist. But if you already exist, how you can create yourself? It's again a contradiction. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Third possibility is, which the atheists they respond to, is the universe came into existence by a cause or by something which initiated it, but that was also caused. So the universe came from Big Bang. The Big Bang caused the universe. So then our question would be, what caused that? What caused the Big Bang? And then they just go in a long explanation. Yeah, there was a infinite number of causes, and that's how it is. The universe just continued. Now this is an issue because philosophically, what we say, this is the fallacy of infinite regression. Like, to make you understand in a simple form, imagine I want to give £10 to Brother Ijaz here. Yeah? So Brother Ijaz says, and I told him that before I can give you £10, I have to take permission from this brother here though. And he's telling me, before I can give you permission, I have to take permission from brother here. And this brother saying, I have to take permission from the brother next to me. And if this chain continues for eternity, we keep taking permission from one another, and every single person saying, I have to take permission from the guy behind me. And if this chain continues for eternity, will I ever be able to give that £10 to Brother Ijaz? No. Okay? But the fact that the universe is existing, the effect is here, the cause has to be there. So the question is that it can't be an infinite number of causes without anything starting it. And let's take another example, like dominoes. You guys have seen dominoes? You make the domino and you add the end, you flick, and then it looks really nice in for entertainment. But the question is, we never just look at the dominoes from the middle of it. Someone had to knock you over to start the effect for the dominoes to fall one other. Okay, something had to knock you over, whether it's a person, whether it's the wind or something, but something must start the domino effect off. So this third possibility doesn't also make sense because it leads to the fallacy of infinite regression. So there's the fourth and last possibility, which we say that look, the universe, it was initiated and caused by something, what we call God or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, caused. That's why it is. And that's the definition of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It says in the Quran, in Surah Al-Hadid, chapter number 57, okay, verse number 2, that huwa al-awwal wal-akhir, wal-zahir wal-batin. Allah is the first. Allah was there. That's the definition of Allah. Allah is uncreated. One of the reasons why the atheists, they reject God, there are a few reasons, main reasons which we'll come to inshallah at the end. One of the main reasons is they're confused regarding the concept of God. Because when they see and hear about the concept of God in all these other religions, or how can there be a God who can lie? How can there be a God who can tell a lie? How come one God is fighting another God? It doesn't make sense. Because why? They're filled up with all these Greek myths. This is what the Greek civilization they used to do. They used to just come up with all these stories about gods, about the Zeus and Medusa, whatever you have. These guys, they're just fighting with one another. It's like a fairy tale. So they're like, a sad God, man. There is no God. But Islam tells the pure concept of God. That God is not like creation. As Allah mentioned in the Quran, Surah Shura, chapter number 42, in verse number 11 or verse number 13. There is nothing like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah doesn't resemble the creation. He's not part of His creation or inside His creation. He's nothing like His creation. Okay, so the concept of God is very clear. So that's our argument. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentioned this argument in the Quran as well, something similar. In Surah Tur, in chapter number 52, verse number 35 and 36, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, talking to the mushrikeen of Makkah, that أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ أَمْ خَلَقُوا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ بَلْ لَا يُوقِنُونَ. That أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ. Ask them that were they created from nothing? Remember our first possibility, the universe came from nothing. Just said, أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ. Were they created from nothing? Second possibility, أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ. Or did they create themselves? Yeah, the second possibility, that the universe created itself. Again, it's illogical. أَمْ خَلَقُوا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ. Or did they create the heavens and the earth? Did they create the heavens and the earth? Then the question is, who created them? Yeah, and that's the third possibility. They can't be going on for infinity, so someone had to create it, and it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what does Allah say? بَلْ لَا يُوقِنُونَ. Actually, the reality, they don't want to believe. That's the reality. If they really had true, zeal to find out the truth and had sincerity, they would accept the message after listening to it. But anyways, coming back to the cosmological argument, okay? So the cosmological argument, to put it forward simply, okay, in an argument you have premises, and then if the premises are true, premise is like an argument, yeah? And if your argument is true, then obviously the conclusion is also going to be true. So how Thomas Aquinas, he puts it forward, okay, is that everything, okay, or this is more like the Muslim version, Islamic version, because even his argument has a bit of flaw, okay. So we like to use the one Imam Ghazali proposed rather than his. But just people in the academic world, they are familiar with his name. But anyways, how it's put forward is that everything in the universe that begins to exist must have a cause. Okay, everything that begins to exist must have a cause. The universe, it began to exist, so therefore the universe also must have a cause. And what do we say? This cause is who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is uncaused. Okay, so we'll go through it one more time. So everything that starts off, it must have been caused by something. The universe started off at a point, so therefore the universe will also, it was caused by something. Yeah? And this cause must be uncaused. Yeah? And the whole reason for being uncaused will be explained earlier on. So just remember these 3 points, yeah? To explain, it's good to learn this argument because we face this kind of situation nowadays more often, and usually our children, our youngsters, they learn these things in school and they get confused. So if you're well versed in it, we can tackle this issue, inshallah. So that's the second argument, and it's such a really strong argument. I didn't go into the details, but I just put it forward very simply because obviously we don't have much time as we have to finish off. So remember these 2 arguments. Yeah, one is the design argument and one is the cosmological argument. For our evidences for the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? And now, even though we have all these evidences, why is it that the atheists, like if you find a sound-minded atheist, okay, or in general, people have this question, even Muslims, they know, why is there evil then? If God is there and He's all powerful, why do you have evil? And that actually sometimes becomes a barrier because we are emotional people, aren't we? We don't believe the emotional beings. So when they see that there's evil and there's rape and murder and there's tsunami and earthquakes, they say, oh, there is no God. Out of the emotion. So what's the reason for evil then? Now, again, we mentioned Epicurus, the Greek philosopher who was an atheist. He says that, and you learn this thing in school as well, they say God is omnipotent, omnibenevolent, and omniscient. That God is all powerful, He's all loving, and He's all seeing. Yeah? These are the 3 qualities they attribute to God. And Epicurus, he put forward this argument saying that, well, if God is all powerful, then why don't He stop evil? If He can't stop evil, that means He's not all powerful. And if God is all merciful, why doesn't He stop this evil? So either He's not all powerful, like He's merciful, but He's not all powerful, or He's all powerful, but He's not merciful. Therefore we reject God. Okay? That's what argument he put forward. And he says, why can't God stop evil? So we said that, look, number one, like we said, the concept of God in all the religions are incomplete. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he has his beautiful names and attributes. Allah has described himself in the Quran. Yeah, remember, we can never grasp Allah fully, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kind of described himself to an extent. And one of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Hakim. Allah is the most wise. Allah is the most wise. Allah sometimes does certain things which is beyond our comprehension. And it's not necessary that we all know the wisdom behind it. Because then we'll all be gods. We don't always know the wisdom behind everything that happens. Yes, sometimes we do. Sometimes Allah explains it, but not necessarily all the time. So that's why sometimes what we might deem as evil might not actually be evil. Okay, sometimes Allah tests people. Okay, we are put in this world for a test. Okay, like Allah said in the Quran, Surah Mulk, chapter number 67, verse number 2, الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. That Allah has created life and death and His, so that He may test which one of you are good in deeds. Okay, if there was no evil, where's the test? And Allah has created a place where there is no evil, which is called Jannah. So life is a test. Second of all, Allah has given us free will. If a person is always forced to do that which is good and he's got no free will, then that's a bit kind of incomplete as well. The whole point is, what's the beautiful thing about human beings is that they've got free will. God has given you a choice to do good or to do bad. Okay, because life is a test. So that's another reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows evil. So you have option. Do you choose to do evil or do you choose to do good? And also from a virtue ethics perspective, okay, from one's morals and character, good characteristics, they develop within a person once he faces trials. Like take for example patience. To be patient person, to be patient is a good virtue, it's virtuous thing, isn't it? But how can you ever be patient if you never face a situation where you have to be patient? Like someone passed away and you have to be patient, or someone's caused you some harm and you're patient. To be forgiving is a good attribute. But how can you ever achieve that attribute if someone hasn't wronged you? Then you have the opportunity now to forgive him. So these are great wisdoms behind, why sometimes Allah allowed evil to coexist with good. Right? So even that argument from, evil, okay, and suffering doesn't really work if you actually ponder over it. Okay. So Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's clarified everything in the Quran. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us as human beings to use our intellect, okay, and use our mind that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. Okay, because human beings are like that, they like to question, but when they have reasonable explanation, they will accept. Yeah. And I'll finish off, inshallah, a few of the things I want to discuss, but I'll mention last 2 points and I'll just finish off. One is also the concept of the hereafter, isn't it? Yeah. The atheists, they say there is no such thing as hereafter. It doesn't make sense. Okay, to put it forward simply, it actually makes more sense to believe in a hereafter. Because number one, the concept of day of judgment, the concept of justice. So no one can go, no one can just go free. They can't escape for the crimes that they've done. People like, imagine Hitler, Mussolini, okay, Stalin, and other, these people in history, Genghis Khan, or whatever, who came and just killed people for jokes. These people have gone scot-free, that means. But the concept of judgment actually makes you understand that no, they haven't gone scot-free. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to bring these people to judgment on the day of judgment. And second of all, if an atheist says that, after we die, that's it, we come to nothing. Let's take for the sake of argument, you're right. Okay, after we die, that's it. There's nothing else. So that means even I'm saved along with you. Nothing's going to happen to you and nothing's going to happen to me. We are both saved. But imagine I'm right. And there is day of judgment. And there is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and God. Then you're in trouble, people. I'm not. So logically it makes more safe. It's a more safer approach to actually have a belief in God and believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And final point, the main reason why someone rejects God or someone rejects anything, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala points out in the Quran. There is 2, but I will just mention the one Allah mentioned in the Quran. Okay, Allah said in the Quran, okay, in Surah Al-Jathiyah, chapter number 45, Allah says, أَفَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. Have you not seen that person who's taken his desire as God? When a person makes his desire his God, he's not willing to accept anything. He doesn't say that I don't believe in God because it's illogical. He just using that as an excuse, but the real reason is he wants to follow his desires. He wants to do what he wants to do. And remember, in the world, no one is a free man. You are either slave to your society, you're a slave, you're enslaved by the government, you're enslaved either by your family. You know, some people, they do anything and everything for their wives, for their parents, for their children. Either you are enslaved by your nafs, your desires, and do whatever your desires tell you to do, or you are slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we'd rather be slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who's the creator of everything, who knows everything, and knows what's best for us. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He give us the correct understanding. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps us firm upon deen. And I started, and I'll finish up with the verse of the Quran which I started my talk, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Yusuf, chapter number 100, in chapter number 12, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says near the end, قُلْ هَذِهِ سَبِيلِ. O Prophet, tell the people, this is my path. What's my path? أَدْعُو إِلَى اللَّهِ. I call people towards the worship and the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, عَلَى بَصِيرَةٍ, with insight, with understanding, with wisdom, with evidences, with full conviction. Because when you have the evidences, no one can shake you. عَلَى بَصِيرَةٍ أَنَا وَمَنِ اتَّبَعَنِي. This is my job and the job of those that follow me. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives us all the understanding and keeps us firm upon Iman. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
MashaAllah, inshallah. Sheikh will be with us again, inshallah, next Sunday as well. He will be with us, inshallah, and inshallah, in the last 10 days of Ramadan.
Sheikh Yahya tomorrow.